So why is China a threat? There's the maritime trade issue, of course. This started back in 2011. This is a time. This is pretty much the timeline,
You started
right?
looking into it, or
Myself, it was about that time period.
but
But
you weren't making videos till 2015.
no,
Doesn't
yeah,
matter,
March 2015 was the first video, and I was. It's even only today that the economy's collapsed and people realize that China's a threat.
Mhm. Yeah.
That it's kind of acceptable to discuss these things. But it's always been a real threat. And Barack Obama, back in 2011, he realized that many countries in Asia were rising economically. And when it comes to great power politics, when your economy builds up, you get a large economy, naturally that translates into military might. And so he gave a speech in 2011 called The Pivot to Asia, and just let Asia know, look, they're the maritime power. We're going to be watching you guys a little bit more. And China's rise was obviously a threat. 2008, the global financial crisis did a lot of damage to America, and China saw that as an opportunity to capitalize. So then the speech happened 2011. 2014, what did China do? They started building artificial islands in the middle of the South China Sea.
Oh, yeah.
And they
So,
said that
artificial island. They didn't conquer an island. They built their own.
they were like reefs that
Okay.
were not so deep, and they had these like dredging or drenching type ships that would come in and suck sand off the floor of the
nearby
sea
and chuck it on the reef.
and put it on and built these artificial islands. And then they started building runways to land planes, and next thing you know, they start building missile launching pads.
Yep.
And they just
weaponizing it, really.
they militarized every single island and started pointing it at every ship going by. So at that point, 2014, in when you start looking at international politics, it's game theory. It's anarchy. It's like gangsters in
You
the
gotta
street.
think, what if I do this? What are they going to think about it?
Yeah.
Or
Like if you got a gun, I think, why does he have a gun?
I need a gun.
I need a gun to protect myself. But you're thinking, I've got a gun to protect myself. See, China's argument was we built these in the South China Sea to protect themselves.
Mhm.
What do you think every other country...
But everyone that's passing through trading is like, why are these guns pointing?
Yeah,
at
they're
my
not
ship?
carrying guns.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You see? Philippines obviously was scared. Went to an international tribunal in The Hague where they ruled against China. They said, look, you don't own the South China Sea. It's international waters so that we can have free trade and everyone can get rich. And it's a perfect signal to the world of China's intent.
To
You
say,
know?
no, it's ours. Like,
Well, to make everybody poor and China rich, become the leader in Asia and dominate the maritime trade. You dominate the maritime trade, you get to choose who goes through and who doesn't.
yeah, okay.
And if you can't get your ships through, you become poor.
Is this the biggest trade spot in the world? Like this passage
I believe
through
it
Asia?
is.
Yeah.
I believe it is, yeah. I believe it
'Cause
is.
China's now focusing on rail, though. On like the Belt and Road.
They have a Belt and Road initiative, which is building the old Silk Road from China all the way through to pretty much through to Iran.
Africa, isn't it?
Africa is also the sea, but the thing is, land is not as effective as sea. You can just put it on a boat and then deliver it. It's cheaper, it's more efficient.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
If you control the sea, that's where the money is, right? So China has, they've spent money in countries building the old Silk Road. And for people at home that don't know, China throughout history, every, 500 years or more, has had massive empires and ruled the world. Like a lot of people, they think, America ruled the world for such a long time, but it's been a blip on the map.
It's only been a couple of 100 years, hasn't it?
Not even 100 years.
Yeah, there you go.
Not even 100 years. China has ruled for several hundred years, many times throughout history. They've almost always been the largest economy in the world, and this is just a return to the norm for them. And if you look at their history, some of their old empires were some of the most ruthless empires of all time, where they literally, instead of trading with other nations, they would make them subordinate nations where they would arrive in ships or by land and say, okay, you got my presents, and they would have to give them food for free or whatever. It's called a tributary system that they've had, and this is how China has behaved for thousands of years. Britain, this little tiny third world barbarian state that figured out how to build ships, and drug dealers, that's what they were drug dealers. They managed to take out the biggest country in the world through their military, through their navy. Well, it was the Opium War, but their navy decimated the Chinese ships, and then all these other countries came in and took out China. That's like the tiny guy taking out
like
the
David
heavyweight.
versus Goliath.
It's even worse than that. It's like, the
ant.
disabled guy in a wheel, the ant taking on the heavyweight world champion, right?
Yeah.
And it was just a fluke of nature. And people see it as the norm, but it's not the norm. The norm is China ruling the world with
powerful.
an iron fucking fist. It's a brutal regime still to today.
I think, like say South Park and stuff, like there's an episode where they're talking about Japan, like Japanese have such small penis, and I don't know, I think that like just through media and stuff, like no one takes China as seriously as what they maybe should. I don't know.
I guess African guys, because they're on average 7 foot
Massive,
tall and have like 10-inch sticks. They probably look at little white Americans and go, "Oh, those little piddly guys." But who's gonna fuck you up, Africa or America? So this whole comparison is just not in reality.
Because we're at a point with like technology and weapons, and they're really smart. So
and so this is why they're a threat. So when you look at the maritime trade from Australia's point of view, we dig holes. We don't have a military because we've had this great powerful friend that has protected our naval trade, maritime trade forever. So we've never had to protect our trade. And it's just, we've got rich from simply trading because people protect us, right? And we've fallen into the complacency that all of our trade is supposed to be safe. Oh, human rights and all these other myths. And human rights is a myth that is created by first world countries that have money.
True.
You only have that if you are rich. Your life is worthless if you're in a third world country and you don't have money. That's just the reality of the world.
Governments.
It's amazing how people don't understand how the real world really works. So now what we have is this great, massive country. It's a behemoth. Like for Australians to look down on China in any way, shape or form is absolutely ridiculous. Their economy is 20 times larger than ours, maybe more. 20 times. Just to think about
What's
that.
their population in comparison to Australia? Is it 20 times bigger or more than that? So we're like
more
25 million, aren't they?
We-
Like 1.6 billion.
We have 25 million people on this landmass called
So
Australia.
there's a lot of them are Chinese.
A large percentage are immigrants that, if anything was to go wrong, will just get on the next flight or boat out of here.
Back to their home.
They're only here for the Australian dollar.
Mm-hmm.
The Australian dollar collapses. There's only going to be a few Australians in the outback with a few sticks trying to fight off the largest military in the world.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the situation we're in, right? And our maritime trade is under threat right now because of the South China Sea, as we just mentioned. China is on the rise, and they're continuously rising. The United States is slowly being pushed out of Asia, and this has been happening consistently since, say, 2011, maybe longer. But since 2014, when they built those artificial islands, from that point on, they started commandeering ships that were just fishing vessels from third world countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, all of these countries that just fish to feed their own population because they're third world countries. The Chinese Navy will go over there and actually take the ship and kill them. And I've actually seen footage of them actually killing fishermen for no reason other than they're such a patriotic, nationalistic Chinese Navy
They don't
that
want them in their water.
this is ours, you should know better, bang, 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 we're going to kill you.
Say the Vietnamese and the Malaysians ever fight over the territory before? Or were they just happy to fish next to each other?